It's a sign of how insanely busy the past couple of months has been that a phone as good as the LG V40 ThinQ has kinda slipped through the cracks. But let's be honest, the V40 isn't just a victim of circumstance here. Like most LG phones from the past couple of years, it played things a little bit too safe, launched at too high a price, and consequently got steamrolled by the competition this October. But now that you can get hold of a V40 for just shy of $700 in the US, it's worth looking again at this often overlooked handset. Especially since LG has used the past 2 months of software upgrades to tune the camera and generally make the V40 a more polished product. I'm Alex from Android Central, and this is the LG V40 ThinQ, the most underrated Android flagship of 2018. If you're having a bit of deja vu here, then I don't blame you. The V40's design is almost painfully familiar by now. It's a head-on collision between the G7 with its tall, notchy display and the V30 with its fairly large size and rounded sidewalls. The biggest thing the V40 has going for it aesthetically is this incredible soft-touch light-shifting back panel. It has a matte texture a bit like the Google Pixel 3, but it's much more visually interesting than that phone. The red version I'm using shifts between a bright crimson and a deep maroon as it tilts through the light. There is also a boring glossy black version if you hate colourful things. The large size, flat surface and rounded sidewalls make it more than a little slippery even when compared to phones like the Note 9 and Pixel 3 XL. There is a one-handed mode here in the software, but the gesture is frustrating to activate compared to other Android phones. And that means reaching the top of the screen can be pretty frustrating most of the time. At least the V40 does give you a pretty good looking OLED panel at Quad HD Plus resolution, even if it isn't as bright as the Note 9 or Mate 20 Pro outdoors. It's a huge improvement over the V30's screen for sure, with that panel's laundry list of technical issues, and I actually prefer the more vivid colour tuning of LG's device compared to the Mate 20 Pro I've been using recently. No surprise to see the boombox speaker setup from the LG G7 return in the V40. After all, this series has always been about audiovisual performance. The fact that it uses the entire body of the phone as an acoustic chamber means music and videos sound fuller and bassier than most other phones. Plus you've got the old faithful headphone jack backed up by LG's Quad DAC for more thunderous wired output. Neither of those things are new, but they are unique strengths for LG. Add to that a rock-solid spec sheet for late 2018, Snapdragon 845, 6GB of RAM, up to 128 of internal storage plus SD, Quick Charge 4 support, though the brick in the box does only support Quick Charge 3, plus Qi wireless charging. The internal cell is only 3300 mAh, which means the V40 won't provide multi-day power on a single charge like Huawei does, but in my time with the V40, I always had enough juice to get from morning to night. Okay, so maybe I've buried the lead a little bit here. We've got almost a full 2 minutes in without getting to the thing that kinda does make the V40 interesting and unique. That's the diversity of its cameras. There's 3 on the back, standard, which gets a nice upgrade from the G7 in terms of pixel size, alongside telephoto and the LG fan favourite wide angle. Around front, an 8+5 megapixel dual selfie setup that gives you standard and wider angle options. All of this means that for now, as far as mainstream smartphones go, the LG V40 gives you more versatility in the kind of shots you can capture. The only competitor that comes close is the one I've mentioned already a couple of times in this review, that's the Huawei Mate 20 Pro. The V40 has gotten a handful of software updates since most early reviews went out that have improved camera performance quite a bit. So despite not being as impressive on paper as Huawei's Leica-tuned hardware, these cameras have generally been rock solid consistent for me. The colours are pleasing, there's ample detail across all 3 lenses, and I actually prefer the extra punch of vibrance that LG's wide-angle shots get compared to the Mate 20's more muted hues. Most of the time, this is a really fun camera setup to use. There is also this gimmicky triple shot feature which captures 3 photos at the same time from each camera, and also spits out a kind of crash zoom video that you see here. Generally, I haven't really used this feature outside of 1 or 2 test shots, it's a bit too slow to be that useful in real life. But if LG has an Achilles heel here, it's probably low light performance. It's carried over the super bright mode from the G7 in name, but this doesn't work like it did before. There's no pixel binning going on here, instead it just ups the sensitivity a bit and uses more aggressive processing. On the main camera with its larger pixels, that's mostly fine. On the other 2 lenses, you'll notice a real dip in image quality once the sun goes down. That applies partly to the selfie cameras too, which are predictably fuzzy in the dark. Having seen what Google and Huawei can do with image processing in night shots, like the excellent Pixel Night Sight mode here, it's hard not to be just a little disappointed with LG's efforts in low light. There is more to this camera than just stills though. Last year's LG V30 brought a big focus on video recording, and its successor packs all of those same software features, only now with improved optics and more focal length options. LG's smooth video zoom feature is definitely appreciated, audio capture is clearer than on Google's Pixel 3 and many other phones, and LG's video stabilization works really well outside of scenes with very low light or lots of sharp movement. In darker scenes, especially when you're using the telephoto or the wide angle, you will start to see a lot of noise just because of the smaller pixel size on those sensors, but it's not too hard to clear that up with the right software. Overall, this is a really fun little video camera as well. So, the software. Like a lot of LG phones through the years, LG's UI on the V40 isn't really a bad thing or a good thing. It's just a thing. It's hard to get too enthusiastic about the stuff it adds on top of Android. The tiresome ThinQ name is still here, largely just as a rebranding of features that were already part of LG's phone software from years ago. So the day-to-day differences are mainly cosmetic, but what I will say is LG still has some of the best haptic feedback of any Android manufacturer. Taps and buzzers are sharp and precise, and really give the impression that you're using a high-quality piece of hardware. And that gels perfectly with fast performance, quick app load times, and smooth animations for a really great overall experience. Outside of that, LG does have a few unique software tricks. The Google Assistant button is back, tap and hold for voice or double tap to open up Google Lens. LG's face recognition returns, fast and reliable as ever. For quick, glanceable information, the always-on display is back too, and if you're a fan of this weird floating bar shortcut menu from the V30, then that's back too. My biggest beef with the V40 software is that it feels just a little stale compared to the direction Samsung and many others are going with Android these days. That's partly because it's still on Android 8.1 Oreo right now, and there's a general legacy Android feel to a lot of LG's UI design, still no indication as to when LG will update any of its devices to Android 9 Pie. In any case, I don't hate LG's UI. What's here on the V40 works well enough, but the company needs to rethink the direction of its software with Android 9 Pie, both visually and in terms of usability. Its local rival Samsung, for example, has done a great job making big, tall devices more usable with its new One UI. I'd love to see LG try something similar. So with its launch price in the $900 ballpark, it's not surprising the V40 couldn't really compete with the Note 9s and iPhones of the world back in October. However, there is a good case for saying the phone is well worth its current asking price of around $700. Like the V30 and V35, it's a good, balanced, all-round phone that's perhaps a little too unadventurous to stand out in as busy a phone launch season as we've had this year. But now, after a couple of months of software updates, a couple price cuts, and the hindsight of having every other phone launch of 2018 behind us, I have no problem recommending the LG V40 ThinQ. For LG's sake though, I hope they figure out how to make a bigger splash with their phones in the new year. That's it for now. Be sure to subscribe to Android Central here on YouTube for the next wave of Android goodies coming up, including the Honor View 20, our take on the very best Android phone out there right now, and more fun stuff from CES 2019 in Las Vegas. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.